Good afternoon. The Ranter isn't going to have a structured video this time. The Ranter is going to rant. This is not going to be something where I go through web pages and read for you the accounts of what was going on in our news of the day, because quite frankly, this has already been out there in the media, and I don't think I need to rehash through other people's words what is going on. To put things simply, in 2016, then candidate Donald Trump was accused of having foreign aid to dig up dirt on his political rival at the time, Hillary Clinton. He was accused of this. People came out to defend him over it. He himself called it a Russian hoax. And from the Mueller investigation that was started on up, he kept saying that it was all a hoax. It was all a witch hunt. Well, 2019, as it turns out, a day after the Mueller report was done, where Mueller released his testimony to the Congress, day after, President Trump, who, since Mueller did not have a smoking gun, or at least was forcibly vague enough, even though he had laid out 10 articles of obstruction of justice as Trump has done, he was unable to directly call out for an indictment because a DOJ memo says you can't indict a sitting president. The day after he did his testimony, Donald Trump started to press the new Ukrainian president on investigating Joe Biden for his son Hunter being on the board of a natural gas company from Ukraine. And the reason why that was such an issue is because apparently there was a prosecutor that was causing issue for that. The scandalous story that President Trump and his minions are trying to push is that Hunter Biden, because of him being on the board of this gas company, was adding to corruption to the country of Ukraine that was already corrupt, and which was why then Vice President Biden pushed for the prosecutor to be removed. That's the spin. That's the narrative. Now, we find out that not only did President Trump press this new president of Ukraine 8 times to investigate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, he withheld military and financial aid. He told his people to hold back upwards of $400 million in aid that was allotted by the Congress to go to Ukraine. Now, why is this aid important? Why are we giving this money? Well, Ukraine is currently, and has been for the past few years, been under constant direct and indirect aggressions from Russia. Indirect by having agents of Russia or friends of Russia in Ukraine manipulate things and cause instability for this country that is desperately trying to keep its independence from Russia. And directly, when they actually went and annexed the Crimea, which was a minor client state of Ukraine, but the Russians annexed it back to Russia. So they need this money. They need the support in order to keep themselves independent and stable from Russia. One moment. Time in. So this aid is needed. This is very important not only for the Ukraine, but for Europe and for our own interests, or at least most of our own interests that do tend to see Russia as kind of a threat. So Trump withholds this aid and reportedly withholds it so long as they don't, until they agree to investigate the Bidens. All this kind of comes out with the whistleblower issue. Now, to go into that, we're not going to go into that too much. We're just basic sayings is that someone in the national security or national intelligence had caught wind of a few things that this president was saying to foreign leaders that was so disturbing that they went to the inspector general about it, and the inspector general took this information and found it was urgent and concerning, so therefore applies to the whistleblower law that the whistleblower cannot be retaliated against for making a complaint. However, the acting DNI, instead of rubber stamping this as he should be doing, somehow felt the need to go to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice told him not to do anything about it, and not to allow the whistleblower to reach Congress with his complaint, his or her complaint, because we all know who it is. Which is unprecedented and actually goes against the law for whistleblowers to be able to go before Congress without prior restraint. So that happened, and the president weighs in on that, calling whoever it is a partisan, even though he has no idea who it is. But we do hear inklings that this part of the complaint was what he was doing with Ukraine, and half the reason why we know that something happened with Ukraine is that the administration seems to feel the need to admit to things. Going down to Rudy Giuliani going on CNN and in the space of 30 seconds say that he did not talk to the Ukrainians about Joe Biden, and then it says, yeah, we talked to Ukrainians about Joe Biden. And kind of like when he realized that he was making one of his errors, he was accusing Tapper of being a media hack. Well, you're the one making a mistake there, buddy. And then his own boss, you ask him enough questions and he'll just admit to anything. It won't be direct, but it'll just be, I did it. When he first talked about Joe Biden and the corruption, when you listen to him speak, you know that he has no idea what he's talking about. They have to investigate Joe Biden. They have to investigate the corruption because they're corrupt, and his corruption is adding to their corruption, and corruption. I'm pretty much paraphrasing. That's the gist. So all that happens. We have yet to hear the whole thing about the whistleblower, and I don't know how far we're going to get on that. But apparently, this Ukrainian caller is only a part of what was the problem for him or her that filed this complaint. And I wonder if this is, again, one of those times where this is the distraction. That while we're too busy worrying about this, about what he's doing with Ukraine and Joe Biden, a little more insidious things are being done underneath the radar because we're too busy on this. Unlike him being a racist asshole and using that to keep everybody's attention on that as opposed to what he's doing underneath. This, I think, is a little bit more important. Um, he is doing, he is admitted to doing, even at this morning, he admits to doing in 2019 what he was accused of doing in 2016 with Russia. Trying to get aid from Russia to help him against a political rival. It's funny how Republicans, either the very few of them try to support what he's doing, or the majority of them stay silent. They'll still want to back his play, but they don't want to be verbal about it. But in this, it's finally led me to believe that there is no alternative for the Democratic Congress but to push for an impeachment inquiry and investigation. I wasn't all that in favor of it beforehand because I know the calculation. The House goes into full impeachment mode, and then that reaches the Senate, and then the Republicans in the Senate kills it. And then Trump could take a victory lap over defeating the House Democrats in their witch hunt, all throughout the election. Well, I don't think we have a choice in the matter anymore. Too many things this person has done that disqualifies him and makes him unqualified to being president. This is the last straw for a lot of this. I'm sure there's a whole lot more within the bag of horrors that this person has done as president. But at this point in time, trying to get a foreign power 8 times to investigate a political rival. Oh, and incidentally, Ukrainian officials have already said that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. And in fact, while people like on Fox News is trying to narrow down the scope on Joe Biden's activity in trying to remove a Ukrainian prosecutor, the narrative being that to remove him for the benefit of his son being the board member of that natural gas company. The world wanted him removed. American and European diplomats and officials were wary of this guy who when we're talking about corruption, was more in line with Vladimir Putin and Russia than he was his own country. People were worrying about him jerking the scales in order to continue instability in Ukraine. And if Joe Biden, there's a clip running around that Joe Biden was bragging on how he took this guy down, or or that Joe Biden was advocating for the withholding of the money, similar to what Trump was doing. Since the world wanted this guy gone for just cause, hell yeah, he can brag about it. And the thing is, there's a difference between the threat of withholding the money and support towards them, so long as they have a political corruption on their books of this guy that is working against their interests, and withholding money and support for this country, and not threaten, actively withholding it, so long as they don't investigate a political rival. That's a bit of a difference. There are apples and then there are oranges. This is like actually naming the variety of apple versus the variety of orange. What Joe Biden did, oh, that's a Granny Smith apple. But what Trump is doing, oh no, that's a Valencia orange. Not only a different variety of fruit, but different varieties within varieties. Many shades of it being far worse. And getting to the point of this is a president of the goddamn United States, and he shouldn't be doing that shit. There should not, no other president, I don't care if he says that everybody does it. Fuck you, no one else does it. And when they tries to call it oppositional research, you know what? When people do oppositional research, they don't go to other countries to get them to do the oppositional research for them. They have the balls. They have to do it themselves. That's what I said from the last video. Why is it that Trump would go to a foreign country to gather dirt, to do accusations against a political rival? Why can't he do that shit himself? Why can't American researchers get hired to do oppositional research? I liken it to him using undocumented workers to work his buildings and work his clubs for cheap labor, for cheap cost or no cost, because oftentimes he doesn't pay these people and then leave them hanging. And what's the pay that Ukraine was going to get? Ukraine was supposed to get their annual aid from us in order to keep themselves stable. And that's what he was holding over their heads, this great and noble president of the United States? Really? This is what you like about Trump supporters? Is this it? Do whatever it takes to not be a president whatsoever? I mean, I thought that on the Republican side there was supposed to have been this like patriotism, that you wouldn't want foreign aid, that you want to do things yourself. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Handle things on your own. But this is not handling things on your own. This is passing it off to somebody else. This is bribing. This is coercing. This is blackmailing a country to doing this. And the thing is, why this is 10 times worse than what he was accused of doing with Russia is that he was a candidate then. He was a rich asshole that will use his corruption to try to influence people to help him against his rival. Because the little old lady in the pantsuit, that was scary. So we need Russians to help us. And in this case, the difference is that he's president of the United States. And this proves, again, that he's disqualified and unqualified for the job, since he cannot possibly bring himself to act like a fucking president. And how he mocks being a president in his rallies, how being all stiff and so forth. Because presidents have to understand the nuance of what they say. Presidents understand, and I don't care which president, good or bad, from Barack Obama to Ronald Reagan to Richard Nixon to John F. Kennedy, they understand that when they speak, the world is listening. And words matter. This president understands that words matter, but he uses it a different way. His words is the words of distraction. Because when he says something that is outlandish, out of bounds, when he proves that his mind is incapable of doing the office, and then he says some stupid shit, or tweets some stupid shit, then the media has to go and analyze what he says, break it down, have panels of people on their media shows to ascertain what he means. Or what does this mean for the country when he says this? And once again, distraction. I will not say that the President of the United States is the stable genius he claims to be, that he has a very good brain, that he has all the best words. Because he isn't. And he doesn't. I think I in my incoherent ramblings on here can come up with a few more larger than a couple syllable words that I say freely, while he has a trouble dealing with regular language that a 6-year-old can handle. But the one thing he is good about, that he is a savant about, that he can't tie his shoes, but he can do this, is that he understands perception, especially media perception, since he spent so many years not only on TV with The Apprentice and so forth, but he spent his time in earlier than that, in the 80s, trying to control the perceptions of people in New York through the machinations they did with the New York newspapers in order to prop himself up. He understands perception. So he will astound you with semi-elaborate concoctions of nonsense, from him being a racist asshole towards a squad, or saying something offhand and then double down and triple down. Because he knows he can do things that can drag away your attention from what really matters, and then you just worry about his bullshit up here. That, once again, while you're up here, while you're worrying about this stuff down here, the policy level, the stuff that's in court, that doesn't hit the headlines as it should. So it's worse as president that he does this. It cheapens the office of the presidency of the United States. It cheapens our country as a whole. We march ourselves into dictatorship. And you gotta think that even if Trump managed to get his full 8 years, the worry is that the next person is going to undo or try to undo all the things that he does to damage us, to damage our country. So unless he believes they can have a dynastic, yet democratic representative republic of his family members or his close minions being president after him, the only route in order to keep Trumpism in existence is to burn the Constitution and burn the terms of office for president and go full dictator. The wheels is on the ground for that. With him controlling the DOJ and the DOJ influencing people not to allow whistleblowers to the Congress, all the corrupted influences that we're seeing now, all the judges that they managed to put into all these appellate courts that they rushed and fast-tracked through. You know, I think for us, we don't think certain things matter because you think, one appellate judge, one in one district, that matters. Then you fail to realize that, yeah, it does matter. It's the same thing as when people worry about national elections and they don't worry about local elections until they realize that we're worrying about our presidential elections or our senators. The state-run offices are suddenly all Republican or majority Republican. And when you have so much state-level control by one party, then a lot of state-run laws fall by the wayside, or even gerrymandering. You get enough control, all of a sudden districts for Democrats and Republicans on the map start to warp and degenerate and get larger for some and smaller for others. voting, voter ID and voter restrictions becoming more and more prevalent. You know, or get off those issues. Planned Parenthood or clinics. Getting certain you get enough people in a state government, then you'll find that you're for those ladies who feel the need to choose, their choices get a little bit more limited when people who don't know them or give a shit about their condition or situation takes away their options or make their options far, 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 far less appealing. I mean, we can tell few months back in one of my videos, which unfortunately I don't have on here, but on all those heartbeat laws that came out of nowhere from that 1 week of all those states. One of them, I think in Georgia, that made it criminal for a woman to leave the state in order to have her choice fulfilled, and then come back and then what? Get arrested for that? See, that's what happens when you take your eye off the state level. You don't care about the state level, that you're just worried about your national politics. But that again, this is one of those things, is that we're too busy up here. These things happen down here. Be it Trump's nonsense or not. You know, I wasn't really expecting Joe Biden to last long in this. I mean, he still has majority support, at least poll wise. Even though in Iowa, Elizabeth Warren has matched him or surpassed him, and hope that becomes a trend. But if he was going to go down, then let him go down gracefully. Don't let him. Don't follow the narrative bullshit of shit from Ukraine that Ukrainians have already said that he did nothing wrong. Don't let Trump's narrative be a contributing factor to that. Both ways. Because, again, I think his time, unfortunately, has passed. It's the max time for him to been out there and trying was 2016. And I understand the reason why he wasn't there. But it's only damaging his legacy for him to be out and continuing to run for president. Now, that is not to say that if he happens to get the nomination, I am going to, back off or, God forbid, entertain the idea of a third party nomination, because I think the third party is a contributing factor as to why Trump is in office. Because if you look at the numbers in 2016, in certain states where the margins were so small for Hillary to lose, was because Jill Stein had that margin. Or Gary Johnson had that margin. I think it was mostly Jill Stein. Because you shave off the Jill Stein numbers, those were going to go to Hillary. She was an alternative from Hillary and to Trump, but mostly from Hillary. And I think I've mentioned previous videos is Jill Stein, who sat at the same table with Mikey Flynn and Vladimir Putin. She visited Moscow too prior to running for office for her suicidal presidential run. I wonder why. The what I kind of think is kind of a byproduct of this is that a lot of people are getting pissed off that Joe Biden is being treated this way, and that they will support him and defend him more than they were going to anyway, more than they were going to when Julian Castro attacked him on the debate stage. People got pissed off of that. And that kind of almost circumvents the natural idea that maybe this time has come, maybe he should bow out, maybe give him that graceful time, thank him for his service. No one disparage him at all. Allow him to be that elder statesman. Allow him to be the guy that can still be a voice for the Democratic Party. Let him be on one of these candidates. Let him do speeches for them. That's cool. But I think this happens. We're going to have like people who want to defend Joe so badly that they don't want him to leave, regardless of if he is actually in decline or not. That no one should treat someone as Trump is treating Joe. And that could push people for wanting him to be the nominee. Over people that could be also viable and good candidates, that could be good presidents. Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete. Some people, I think, have enough juice that they can survive not fulfilling their presidential run now. That they can come back and show that they're a bit more seasoned. Make sure they're in the national limelight all this time. Make sure they become a household name. But if they don't make it now, they have the opportunity to make it later, which is cool. But it is a worry, at least in my mind, because I tend to think in different angles at times that people will get pissed off on the treatment of Joe, and then they'll rally to Joe Biden, and he will get the support, and then he'll get the nomination. For me, once nomination is there, then I will back Joe 100%. As anyone who's a Democrat would back anyone 100% once they hit the nom. And, if Joe Biden is sundowning, or his age is affecting him, see, unlike President Trump, who's also sundowning, who also blathers incoherently at times, Joe may be a gaffe machine, but President Trump is the industry of gaffe that churns out gaffe machines. The difference between a President Biden and a President Trump is that a President Biden will listen to his advisors, because it is understood that a president is not expected to know everything, that he'll have people around him from his cabinet and his advisors and his senior advisors that will relay him information, and he decides from that information. This is the reverse is in effect with the Trump administration, because Trump is the one with the ideas, and his advisors are only there to agree with him. And if they don't agree with him, they're gone. Which is why half of his cabinet are Hyman. The difference is between a President Trump who doesn't get advice from advisors, but tells advisors and advises them what to say. A President Biden will listen to his advisors and will decide and act accordingly. He's not going to ramble on something that just passed through his mind, as Trump does. It is an interesting thing how it is almost an industry amongst his people, where they have to clean up what he says. Or, when something happens and they say, well, no, President Trump he's not going to do that. He doesn't believe in that. He's not going to say that. And then, 45 minutes later, there's President Trump waddling out saying exactly the opposite of what his people were saying. But, that aside, yeah, it is kind of, I wonder if there is an actual calculation in going after Biden, that maybe there is hopes that people will rally around Biden, keep him ahead, keep him to the point of nomination because they assume that Trump can beat Biden. You know, get him on a debate stage and try to run circles around him. I don't know. It's kind of a gamble because no matter how much Joe Biden may be sundowning or is misspeaking or is having to search for his thoughts, still he has his integrity shines through. His authenticity. Forget the word, but his realness will shine through. And the difference between his realness and Trump's realness, because people also think he's authentic, Trump is an authentic asshole. And Joe Biden is an authentic human being. All right. Now that out of the way, one more point, at least to go into this, is that I was resistant to the idea of Congress impeaching them. Like I said, I know the calculation. If the House goes ahead and impeaching, then Senate Republicans will kill it. I understand this. I am now in favor of the House doing this because they have no alternative. I mean, I understand people being angry at them for dragging their feet on the concept of impeachment, for there are so many things that this person has said and done that warrants at least an investigation into impeachment. And the investigation on its own can be as damaging as an actual impeachment conviction, because then you have every day congressional hearings on camera of people coming up and being compelled to testify and to rattle off the wrongdoings and ills that this president has done in office, and yet this be part of the everyday stimulus for people, especially casual political watchers who don't, are not as dedicated, shall we say, as some of us are. But I was hesitant about it, but now I'm not. Now it has to be done. And I can go through how this could be actually effective. You go into impeachment knowing that more than likely Senate Republicans are going to kill it. You count on that. You count on that because then you can take every single name of the Republicans that vote no in the Senate, and then you point your finger at them, and you make sure you control the narrative. And the narrative is that this president is so corrupt that these Senate Republicans, despite knowing this, is defending and protecting him. Protecting him at the expense of the American people. And then you run with that. You run with that for every one of these Republicans whose seats are in play. From Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham on down. Especially his defenders. People who debase themselves and go out of their way to protect this man at the direct conflict of their office. People worried about Nancy Pelosi, why she was taking so long in deciding to go into this or not. I understand her political calculation. People should get off her back about it. There is a thing where you're 1 year, or less than 1 year off on the main stage of an election. That this can be kind of complicating and could backfire on you. But again, we're no longer in the hem and hawing. If the Democrats after today are not in full impeachment mode for what President Trump was trying to coerce and blackmail a foreign country into doing his oppo dirty bullshit, then we can't win. And what I mean by winning, I don't mean like putting the score on the scoreboard. To righting the wrongs. To say to the country that no, this is unacceptable. And we don't mean that we're just going to say things are troubling or things are disturbing, as is the line of Trump apologists and Republicans who can't bring themselves to condemn him, but then they'll just say, well, this was kind of disturbing. No. No. Take action. Take action. Stop saying that we are threatening to hold someone in contempt, or we're threatening to subpoena people. Do it. Do it. I mean, if you're just stop threatening, because your threats are meaningless. People are coming up to your congressional meetings saying that they have some form of privilege when that privilege doesn't exist for them. That they laugh at your subpoenas. They laugh at your condemned citations. They laugh at the concept of the Emoluments Clause. They laugh at the Hatch Act, that they can run roughshod over your issues and complaints that are valid. They're proving they believe themselves above the law. Democratic fellows in the Congress, in the Senate. Republicans are not going to save you, or they're not going to snap out of it. Because too many of these people are so craven and fearful of not losing their Trump base that they believe is their lifeblood, that they're not going to contradict their patron at the expense of their country. Because power, as fleeting and as illusionary as it is for them, is more important than their constituents, than the family values that they were touting in the 90s against Bill Clinton. The patriotism of standing up for George W. Bush in the Iraq War. It's time to stop threatening. It's time to take action. The thing with Corey Lewandowski was pathetic. Because he could just say the same line that privilege, and I don't have to be truthful to the media. Yeah, well, he's employed by the media. But he was able to do that because my people on my side of the aisle can't seem to get beyond the point of threatening. Stop threatening. Do it. Hold him in contempt. Hold any of these people in contempt that do not answer your questions. Have them being addressed by congressional lawyers. Because as much as it's good to have our people on the camera asking the questions, it's another thing entirely when you have a officer of the court asking these questions who already know that a person's answers can be interpreted one way or another, and they don't need to, respond like in hype. And they're not being voted in. They're not trying to cater to voters. But these lawyers can be like, oh, you're saying that, right? Okay. All right. Well, you say that. And that's your honest answer? Okay, because I can tell you the 3 or 4 points of that is in violation of such and such law that you're now admitting to. Okay. All right. You go at the idea of impeachment. You make sure you control the narrative that this is the function, this is our Article 1, this is in favor of the American people. You make sure that every day you point out all the wrongs. And success or fail, you go down in flames, and you go down on your sword. You make sure that you fought for your country against this man. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. Congressional function should be doing this. The presidential candidates should not. They should not go out there and say that they're opposed to impeachment. No, that's not what I mean. I don't think they should go out there and suggest that he should be impeached. Not at the presidential candidate level. What I want for the presidential candidates to suggest, if anyone asks them about impeachment, is that we will let the Congress do what they need, but as far as I'm concerned, as a presidential candidate, I don't want him impeached. I want to beat him. I want to beat him at the polls. I want to beat him at the election. Because if the presidential candidates come out and push the idea of impeachment before an election, before they're going in to try to become the candidate and the nominee for the United States of the United States, go against this man, then you're saying that you can't beat this man at the election. And that's bullshit. I said this a number of times. The only reason why anyone will be defeated by Donald Trump in the next presidential election will be because they allowed themselves to be beaten. Trump will have no political genius. He has nothing on his record to suggest him continuing to be president is a good thing. Anything that he touts, like the economy, he has hardly anything to do with. The only reason why he can tout it is that he's sitting in the chair at the time that it's going on. There is nothing that he can bring to the table to prove that he's a benefit to this country as president of the United States. You can question his support for the Supreme Court candidates. That, he threw a dart on the board to pick out a name that is as far as he went. Certain activities that he has done, that he has signed, that he's backed, are been done by other people who he himself just got on board with because of the optics, like like certain things. I'm in rant mode. But there's nothing that he can bring to the table that the majority of the people of the United States can see as a plus to keeping him as president of the United States. Every time he speaks, he only makes it worse for himself. So if he happens to win the next 4 years, it's not on him and his genius. It's on you, Democratic nominee for president of the United States, whoever you are. This is yours to lose. And you want to go out there and you want to say you want to beat him. You don't want him removed. If the Congress wants to try to do that, fine. But I'm not here for that. I'm here to beat him. And be proud of that and be confident of that. That's what presidential candidates should do. And he needs to be beaten. Because you can only go so far on the wrong track before you can no longer make the U-turn. Or you can no longer right yourself. We are a country in a world that constantly progresses, and we never go back. That's both a positive, and that's also a negative. You can't go back to a time where things were worse. Certain racist people whine about people having equality. If it isn't like people with different skin pigmentations or different sexual orientation, or equalities in gender, people lament how things were not as good as they were back then when white heterosexual males ruled. You can't go back. You're not going to go back to slavery. You're not going to go back to Jim Crow, despite the fact that there's still fucking inequality in 2019. But we won't go back to the bad days. We can only move forward. But the problem is that we are moving forward into bad days, and we can't go back to the good days of the Obama administration, which I think is some of the motivations and the support of Biden, that he reminds people of Obama, that we can go back to the Obama era. No, we can't. We have to do better. You don't beat an era by going backwards. You beat an era by going beyond it. And this is what we need to do. The Trump era, we have to go beyond. We can't go backwards. We have enough talent in our party. We have enough talent in the American people that we can take that wrong turn and veer off, and then end up someplace better. It's a little idealistic, but here it is. But it doesn't mean we go backwards. We can't. Our politics is Pandora's box, and her lid is off, and you can't put it back on. You know what was left in Pandora's box? After all the demons and all the ills and all the evils and all the horrors was unleashed, inside Pandora's box was hope. That's what remained, and that's what we have left. You lose the hope, and then sign over the democracy of our country. Sign away the representative republic of the United States. Because as long as people treat our politics with apathy, as long as people just brush away the idiocy that they see ahead while not noticing the autocratic wheels turning in our government, then you may as well have Trump go out there with a fake military uniform, with fake medals on his chest, with sunglasses, and have his wig be curly, because then he's now a dictator. And then all his family members have those same bullshit uniforms too, because then, yeah, it'll be a dynastic Trump dictatorship. All because you didn't want to hear the bullshit. You didn't want to act. And you called the worries of concerning Americans as fake news. You didn't give a shit about migrants being held in detention centers equal to internment camps. You questioned the definition of things being concentration camps when people are being held in places that is the definition of them. He blows off a climate change meeting yesterday at the UN to chair a religious freedoms meeting talking about religious persecution around the world. That's kind of funny coming from someone who wanted a Muslim ban. And he wanted a Muslim registry so that people can watch Muslims in the United States. That he said that anyone that leaves a mosque might have evil in his heart. That they need to be watched. That's not religious persecution? You know what? I wish one of these reporters who have to follow this guy's ass all over the world, I wish they had the balls to go, Mr. President, just one quick question. Since you say that, you had said that Muslims are so dangerous they need to be watched, what was the religious persuasion of the majority of the mass murderers that use guns? From Aurora down to Odessa, down to El Paso, in Dayton, and Pulse, Parkland. How many of them were Muslims? because you want us to watch people over their religion, that to point the finger if their skin color is a little bit too darker than peach, that they must be terrorists or gang members. Because if they're this color, then they're just mentally ill, and we need to build more mental institutions as opposed to not keep stockpiling. So, what was the religious persuasion of those shooters? Should we be watching them? See what people will walk out of their church and wonder if there's evil in their hearts? Doesn't quite work, does it? But religious freedom always seems to be a little selective. I remember the Louisiana uh, politician. She was lamenting about religious freedom, that it should be only for Christians, because how dare a Hindu family have any protections for their religion when their child gets disparaged in school for not being Christian. I thought religious freedom was only about Christianity. Um, I hate to break it to you, for those who don't understand history, but we were more founded by Freemasons in our government as opposed to actual Christians. Look at a lot of the quotations of our founding fathers. Even the ones who were Christian, like John Adams, who was an offshoot of Puritans in New England. It's why we don't have a state religion. Why that all religions can be represented in this country and given the same equality and freedoms as any other belief system or non-belief system. That's why there's a fully functioning satanic temple that is getting religious benefits. All right, enough of my ramblings. As long as this is out in the news, that this jackhole president of our United States is trying to use his influence and use his office to not only make himself rich, but to blackmail other countries to do his dirty work, then I'm going to be here and I'm going to rant about it, because the urge to rant will rise and will continue to rise, and I will not be far to remind you of what's going on, to cut through the haze, to get you to see the point. This is wrong. This is all wrong. Alright, guys. I'll see you next time, and unfortunately, it'll probably be sooner than later.